The news is out. The general election will apparently be on July the 4th, and Rishi Sunak is expected to confirm that at a 5 p.m. cabinet meeting when it finishes. And so almost certainly, we're into a general election rather than a phony election, and probably a countdown to a new Labour government, and we are going to therefore see the inadequacy of the Rwanda plan. No Rwanda flights will take off, and in that, of course, Rishi Sunak has failed in one of his pledges. I cannot cheer loud enough. Inflation is now down to what it was before he took office. A great achievement, I suppose. But nobody feels it. Nobody feels that improvement, because everything else is so run down and so ill-used. And we feel ill-used, don't we? Scandal after scandal. I'll post a thing about Prime Minister's questions shortly, and but a lot of that is dominated by Keir Starmer's call for a law about duty of candor. He's quite right. He's quite right. But a duty of candor is already there. As was pointed out in Prime Minister's questions, a duty of candor is already there, enshrined in the NHS, and that hasn't helped. I know so many doctors, nurses, and people who work for the NHS who have been bullied, harassed, thrown out of their jobs because they have followed the duty of candor and have reported their concerns in the correct way. And they have been bullied and threatened for doing so, because the institution is considered more important than the individual, and defending what has happened is more important than ensuring what will happen. So, looking back to Jeremy Hunt's achievement, I use the term very loosely, in the NHS, to structure a duty of candor around all our public institutions is not going to be efficacious. It's going to be another disaster and another whitewash. We shouldn't be structuring our life on Tom Sawyer's garden fence. We should be structuring our life on what is right, not what puts money into people's pockets, not what is lazy, not what is quick, and not what is simply an illusion. We need to have a serious law that enshrines in our national behaviour the principle that we must improve, the principle that we must learn from good practice. That incidentally was a law that Chris Heaton-Harris brought into Parliament a few years ago as a private member's bill, that the NHS trusts should learn and should record proper good practice. Of course, that should have been something that goes back to the very foundation of the NHS. And yet, the record keeping seems so chaotic. I've told a story many times about how when I was in hospital for cancer, the paperwork which I'd been given was so covered in blood that I think I thought somebody had thrown it out. And so I asked my GP for a copy of that paperwork. And what I got after a month was something completely different, with completely different summaries, based very much on the hindsight of treating me rather than the original diagnosis. It was suffused with deceit. I did actually find the original paperwork so I could compare the two. This isn't honesty. This is dishonesty. This isn't something we can trust. This is something we should fear. Because when you want the paperwork to say what actually happened, and you get something which has been revised and tinkered with and played with, and people have gone into their computers and adjusted the facts of history, we should live in fear. And the NHS has a duty of candor. Let me say, absolutely and fundamentally, the duty of candor brought in by Jeremy Hunt is poppycock. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because there isn't an external body to supervise it. And I'm not talking about some quango like Ofcom. That doesn't work either, by the way. We need something which is genuinely independent, to a body that people can go to and say, this is wrong, it must be fixed. And we need to get rid of the attitude of blame. Because if a duty of candor is to work, then we shouldn't be finger pointing. We should be saying, this is wrong, and it must improve. What we're doing is saying, this is wrong, and that's the person who did it. Oh, that person is too grand. Let's transfer blame, or let's silence the whistleblower. A duty of candor will only work if it's divorced from blame. Blame is part of the criminal activity that takes place and is identified. And there may be a parallel process which involves criminal actions and exposes criminal actions, but that is not the duty of candor. The duty of candor is about making sure our institutions work better in the future than they have in the past, because the people who are working in those institutions are called out for the mistakes that are made, whether this is in the police force, in the NHS, in education, in government. It doesn't matter where it is, or in law. The duty of candor, telling the truth, is paramount.